welcome to the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horwitz. Hit me up on Twitter at NJH287, also on LinkedIn, where you can see more content, the website, dsmsports.net, and the podcast is available on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. We got a really cool show for you guys today. I have a themed background to reflect it. I always wanted to learn more and more about esports. It's been up and down over the years, of course, but it's really not going anywhere. There's some strong fan bases, some strong brands out there, as you'll learn about in today's interview. My guest on the podcast today is Brendan Hall. He is the esports coordinator, also faculty at Endicott College. Has a really impressive and interesting background, as you'll hear, getting to esports in the last few years of his career, but really looks at it from that marketing lens and has experience in journalism, in sports reporting, in more traditional sports, in, of course, esports now today, working on the brand side and working now with students and growing a college program there at Endicott. Just so much good information here. We talk about really what's behind the growth and also rise and fall of esports. How do you build fan bases in this esports ecosystem? The difference across titles, from Fortnite to League of Legends to Rainbow Six Siege. Just so much interesting information here. So here he is. Listen up to Brendan Hall of Endicott College. I am back on the podcast with today's guest, and I'm so psyched we don't delve enough into the esports world. I've had a few guests over the years, super interesting stuff, and really, as you'll learn, he just has such an interesting background, has had several lives, as we were joking about offline a little bit. My guest on the podcast today is Brendan Hall. He is the esports coordinator for Endicott College. And Brendan, welcome to the podcast today, man.
Neil, it is an honor and a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, bud.
Hell yeah. I'm really psyched about the conversation. Heck, we could have started recording 10, 15 minutes ago, and we had good stuff already. So this is going to be a great chat.
Well, that's your fault.
But before we get into the meat of our discussion, Brendan, tell us about you. As I alluded to, you've had a really interesting career path that led different lives, are now doing the esports thing at Endicott. So tell us about your stops and what you're doing today. Any tips for folks that want to try to do what you do?
Goodness, where should I start, Neil? Well, so first of all, esports is something I've jumped in the last couple of years. I've been here 2 years at Endicott. Prior to that, I was director of integrated marketing at Auction Esports, which was at the time the largest multi-title org in New England, with some investments from Kraft Sports Group, the Gronkowski family, several others. But prior to that, so maybe I'll wind it back a little bit. Start from the beginning. Born and raised in Massachusetts. You've had enough people on this podcast that could tell you about what it was like back in the day, the Boston sports writing scene, right? It's a magical place for sports writers to get their start. The Boston Globe, my dad's era, it was just the Yankees of sports writing. And, growing up, stealing my dad's Globe sports section at lunchtime, at breakfast time, and then stealing the Boston Herald from my second period business class and reading the Herald at lunchtime. I wanted to be the next great one. And I had a pretty good run, I'm not going to lie. So I ended up getting a co-op at the Globe in college. I did a couple other internships. I actually did one where I went down to Jacksonville, Florida, and I didn't do any sports writing. I was actually covering crime, and I don't have a great Florida man story, by the way.
I was going to say.
Just want to put it out there. But I will say the public records laws in Florida, very, very nice to deal with. And so if you're wondering why Florida man crime is because I don't think it's any different from Montana man crime, but you don't hear about Montana. But Florida, it's all there, right?
Yeah.
So, but it ended up being the best experience of my 3 internships because I learned how to be a real reporter and learn how to, develop a writing style through my reporting. But and bounce around a little bit. I freelanced for the Globe for 4 years, doing high school notebooks and also covered a lot of Bruins. And then in 2010, so if you recall, ESPN started building these hyperlocal websites. They had ESPN Chicago, ESPN New York, and so they had a unique problem with Boston in that there was no radio station in the market, so they had to get creative with how they did the marketing and promotions. And I got to be when they were purging the globe of ESPN guys, knowing I was like option 19 if they wanted to hire a Bruins writer, but I knew I had done some really good work on the high school beat. I had beaten the Herald on a couple big breaking news stories. How it happened, I don't know, but it was like I kind of thought, well, if they ever need a high school writer, and so I Dave Leafort, my boss, who edited some of my stuff at the Globe, had been hired as the Boston editor. And I said, hey, do you ever think about doing a high school? Let me know. And he said, yeah, absolutely. And nothing happened for 6 months. And then I got a call out of the blue from Craft Sports Group. Hey, we're looking to hire a high school writer. 4 rounds interviews later, I started this thing from scratch for ESPN. The best thing I can say about it is, so up here in Boston, right, pro sports dominates. This is a world-class city, but probably not a very good college sports city. And high school sports, it's tough to get on the radar because of how you get a century's worth of history with 4 pro sports teams. So, and the talent wise, I mean, like you go to, the way I always couch this is, right. So like Texas, let's say Kyler Murray, right? Allen, Texas. I think he had 28 teammates sign FBS scholarships in high school. We're lucky to get half that for the entire state of Massachusetts. But the difference between us and Texas, I will swear on this, is right. So I live in Framingham, right? We hate Natick, home with Doug Flutie, which hates Walpole, which hates Foxborough, which hates Mansfield, which hates Franklin, which hates Milford, which hates Marlborough. Like, you just go on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And the town board of tribalism, people are very, very proud of their little place in the world up here. And the fabric that high school sports plays in all these little towns. Talent, throw the talent out. It's bragging rights. It's towny tribalism, right? And we really leaned into it that way. Really kind of tried to make the fans the center of attention, because we couldn't just follow recruiting. I mean, high school coverage is very recruiting intensive, right? College fans are nuts, right? They love reading recruiting stuff, but we don't have that luxury. I had to kind of go the other direction, and it ended up, again, in an area that's dominated by pro sports. It's even when Boston College was really good with Matt Ryan, a couple decades ago, it was hard for them to get on the radar. And so to make high school sports coverage on ESPN Boston the third most traffic thing after Red Sox and Patriots coverage, with the Celtics and Bruins in finals runs, deep playoff runs, that's just stupendous. Okay. We kind of did it differently. My wife grew up in Indiana. Biggest honor in Indiana after being the governor is probably being Indiana Mr. Basketball, right? There's no Mr. Football, or there was no Mr. Football in Massachusetts. There was no Mr. Basketball. We just started making those awards, and having access to Gillette Stadium, bringing the kid on the sideline before a Patriots game, getting to meet Mr. Kraft, whoever else was hanging around. One year we had Mark Wahlberg jump into the photo op. That was pretty cool. We just did things differently. Did it from a more macro perspective, but Massachusetts is a pretty small state, and yet in 6 years I put in 175,000 miles in my car.
Wow!
I knew if I was going to beat the Globe and Herald with a fraction of their staff power, let's say, I was going to have to be face to face. And I'm super old school. We'll get into this with fan relations stuff, but I'm super old school. Nothing beats face to face. And so that paid off. But the people truly felt like it was their own thing. It's the best piece I ever got from one of the best bosses of my career, Fred Kirsch, who's now the chief content officer at the Patriots. He always said that this thing won't take off until the fans feel like it's their own thing. And so along the way, and look, I did some other cool stuff for ESPN. I covered a couple Stanley Cups. I covered the Boston Marathon bombing. I did a story once where I walked 18 with Tiger. That was cool. all along the way, I kind of got this bug of like what I was doing was yeah, I was sports writing, but it was also like really marketing, right? I was really like brand building,
Totally.
community building. And so I kind of had this inkling of like, if I have a shot to do this, like a marketing, I don't care if it's sports or plumbing, I'm going to take a shot because I just fell in love with the art and science of it. And, because like we sold sponsorships too for ESPN Boston's high school coverage. We got like, like, I don't know how the heck I never took a class on sponsorship sales in college. And here I am closing like six figures worth of deals. Like people
Yeah.
just their site. Um, so I really want to take a shot at. I had a chance to hitch a ride with a company called Huddle.
Yeah.
Uh, you're familiar with Huddle, Neil?
Yeah. I was saying, I hope you got some stock.
Yeah. I mean, they're not a publicly traded company, so I'm always, when
Right,
they
right. They've
if
certainly
they're not a
grown over the
publicly traded
years.
company and they want to offer you stock, I have some, look, my dad was in finance for 40 years. He always gave me sage advice on this stuff, but no, it's so that was a really cool experience. I was there for 4 years.
And just for listeners who are unaware, Huddle is basically like you submitting coach game film for coach for
Yeah,
and
at its
it's
core,
grown quite a
Huddle.
bit.
Yeah, at its core, Huddle is a hosting platform for game film. That's what it was always built on. I think what really allowed Huddle to scale very quickly seemed like within a year they went from little market share to 99%
Yeah.
was the highlight creation tool.
Yeah.
You can remember at the time. So at the time, Huddle entered the market, right? It, when I played high school football, Neil, um, if we wanted to get scout film from our opponent, somebody had to go meet somebody at a diner parking lot at like 11 o'clock at night, right? And then you trade the film out of somebody back of somebody's trunk there. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you go back and you watch the tape and you pray that it's not the Blair Witch Project, right? Like you pray that it's not like it's actually like
Right.
not shaky camera, not resolute, like you know what I mean? And Huddle's disruption was digitizing all that.
Yeah.
And they weren't the first to digitize, but they were the best at the time. And so now when coaches exchange film, they basically hit a couple buttons. So
Right.
the highlight creation tool part of it was critical, and it completely democratized recruiting here in Massachusetts. So because a student could just create their own reel. They made it really intuitive to create and then send it out to college coaches. So it used to be recruiting around here, you know, Boston College always got the first pick of the litter of who they wanted, and then a couple other local schools were fighting for leftovers: UConn, UMass, whatever. Occasionally, some kid goes to Michigan or Syracuse or something like that, Penn State. But that's kind of how the pecking order was. And I'll never forget this. There was a 1 year early in Huddle's kind of entry into the Boston market. There was a very, very talented tight end from a high school south of Boston who was 6'5", 230. And in the state championship game at Gillette Stadium, he had a one-handed, like Gronkowski catch down the seam that was
Yeah.
incredible. And I think at the time he was committed to BC, or at least very close to it. And that was the first highlight on his reel. I want to say 2 months after that, somehow Alabama got a hold of that. And they literally flew out Mario Cristobal, who was an assistant coach, just to make sure the kid was actually 6'5", 230, like it said on his profile. And sure enough, he was. And so there was suddenly overnight, I think two dozen offers came in. So like,
Yeah.
what the heck, like Nick Saban, Ed Orgeron, guys like that coming up here to look at recruits because they saw the film. That completely changed the game up here.
Yeah.
And the effects of that are still ongoing. But so that was Huddle's reference, is a democratization of all that. Like I think USC a couple years ago had a kid from Alaska starting on its defense. That probably doesn't happen 20 years ago, right?
No.
But now with the distribution of film, it really, really just democratized how high school athletes are recruited, right? And so I did a lot of the football marketing
Mhm.
for them, and we ran a couple really. We used to run these events every year called Huddle Blitz during COVID. Taking the coaches clinics online, and we got some big names. One year we got Deion Sanders. Another year, John Harbaugh, John Gruden. Man, there were so many amazing projects I worked on. There were some amazing creators I worked with, coaching influencers. And and then a couple of years ago, a great mentor of mine from the Patriots days, JJ Alberts, he had been recruited to into the world of esports and had convinced me to take a shot, and I'm glad he did. He's a guy I've been close with for 15 years now, and the thing about esports, I just fell in love with instantly was, I think, the branding. Like, if you look at the Boston Breach, and they're still competing in Call of Duty League. They're the color scheme, like the black and the neon green, very bright popping green. They have this logo. It's like a mask with an X over one eye. It just looked badass, right? And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, if I was working at the Pats, I could never take a shot like this, branding wise. But in esports, taking shots, taking risks is kind of the expectation, right? At least in America, it's a kind of a infantile industry still. It's ascending, but and so it was one of the coolest brands I've ever worked on. It had the way I always describe it is like, it had such, like, you ever watch a show Mr. Robot?
See a little bit. Yeah.
Rami Malek. Yeah, it kind of gave off that kind of vibes, the Mr. Robot hacker vibes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and here I am today on the college esports scene at Endicott. I teach esports marketing here at Endicott. I've approached the growth of this place from sort of a content standpoint, marketing. Let's work on our students here learning how to develop their own brands, because that's the one edge that I think esports has over other industries is the entrepreneurial spirit, right? If you want to thrive in this industry, you got to learn how to brand yourself, how to sell yourself. And so taking it through that lens, we have an esport management major here and a minor.
Wow.
So being curriculum based. Yeah, I probably said way too much now. I think you were looking for a Reader's Digest version, and here I go, 10, 15 minutes. But yeah, a lot of twists and turns. And I've had to reinvent myself 100 times over, man. But I honestly, and we can get into this, but like, I found that the rules that allowed me to ascend 15 years ago, it might be a different coat of paint, but it's still the same fundamentals.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack there, and
just a little bit.
We can go in so many different directions, with where we go next. But I guess I want to try to think about, because this applies sort of maybe across the board in your career, and certainly now in the esports space, what it was like as you saw, because you came up as a journalist when the industry was rapidly evolving, when social media was becoming bigger and bigger, and when it was more democratized. Web 2.0 was reaching its zenith, so to speak. So, like, how did you start to see these communities form, and where you had to go to get information, disseminate information, to find fans, whether it's the growth of message boards, Discord, Twitter, etc., and how that affected kind of your lens into what you were doing?
Well, one thing right off the bat, Neil, we owned Twitter at ESPN Boston. Mm-hmm. Like we made it a point to really own social media. It's where the audience was. When you're covering high school sports, your general demographic is 14 to 24. That's where they were. Mm-hmm. And look, when I got the job, I think I had 400 Twitter followers. By halfway through year 2, I had 15,000.
Wow.
And so many people out there will tell you these little hacks and visibility and blah, blah, blah. Man, the secret to growth is just tweet your ass off. I swear to you, it's really, too many people put too much science into this stuff. Like, be everywhere, be present, and do it in a way that invites your followers to feel like they're part of the action.
Yeah.
Right. And so live tweeting from games, showcasing the fans, just interacting with everybody that comments on us, going back and forth. Don't sling it. don't stay out of the mud. Don't sling mud. Stay out of the mud. Be a place of positivity. But yeah, giving everybody making people follow me on social media feel like they were there at the game.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing you can do. Give that slice of life.
Was it about kind of like identifying where these micro communities started to flourish and exist? And I want you to take that lens both in the high school football and recruiting area as well as how you started to understand it through the esports lens of where these communities exist, who the super fans are, who the evangelists are, who the influencers are,
Yeah.
where you're best situated to market whatever brand it might be or whatever content it might be. Like, how did you start to like identify what the where your time is worth being spent, especially as more platforms started to emerge?
It's a good question. It's a good question. I think so. Um, I'll say, even winding it back with social media, this was also at a time when message boards were
Fully. I mean,
you know,
that's the
I know
lifeblood of
they
college
still
football.
are, right? But like, you know, again, you talk about Web 2.0, right? But like message boards were a thing, very much a thing in Web 2.0, right? And so, um, I really kind of made sure all of our stuff was getting promoted on the message boards, even social media site, because those are where the hardcores are, right? And if you get the hardcores to buy in, right, they're going to be the ones that are going to be doing the quote unquote free marketing for you. They're
Yeah.
going to be doing the word of mouth. I mean, think about it,
Earned
Neil.
media.
Right? It's a great way to put it. Right? I mean, think about how many billions of dollars are spent in this country to get people to talk about things. And if you
Totally.
can, and if you can get these hardcore loyalists, these high school football fanatics, to talk about you for free, right, without any sort of urging it at you, like look, and we also, we also like did it from a statewide lens where, the Boston media typically would cover only Eastern Massachusetts, and that's how they ranked everything. And so, well, let's rank the Springfield teams up against the Boston teams, and get people talking about it. And so, God, every week, and even if we were wrong, but just some guy from Brock. Oh, how can you say Springfield Central's better than Brock? Who do they play out there? Long Meadow, right? Like that gets people talking. It was a
Totally.
different perspective, right? We had all state teams instead of all district teams. How can you say this kid from East Longmeadow is better than this running back from Plymouth, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, because again, people are tribal. They think their little their little spot on Earth is better than everyone else's spot on Earth, right? And when you scale that a little bit more to the entire state, and where like 2/3 of the population is in the Metro Boston area, right? And so they don't always they don't always have great perspective on what's going on out in Worcester and Springfield and the Berkshires. And
Right.
so here I am driving out there, with my own two eyes and taking my shot at it and understanding that, hey, look, safe is the riskiest position of all, so let's go for it. And again, I had a great boss, again, Fred Kirsch, who really, this was his kind of, we had a shared vision about this, right? And so, yeah, do it from a state wide lens, get people
Yeah.
talking. Yeah. So
What is sort of like the modern equivalent of that for esports? Like, and how did you go about like understanding where these people are, and like, is there a modern equivalent of that?
I don't know. Good question. I think, to answer your question about like the micro communities. So again, I'm kind of old school, but at Oxygen, we owned two esports facilities, one in North Bergen, New Jersey, and then one right at Patriot Place, right across from the front entrance of Gillette Stadium. It used to be a concert hall, Showcase Live, and it was re-outfitted for gaming PCs, but it still kept the stage, still had the bar, still had the snack bar, which had the best rated wings in Foxborough. So I always thought that was a great challenge, right? Like, what do you mean the best wings in Foxborough, right, are in some freaking gaming center? Well, yeah, they are, right? You had a 4.6 on Yelp. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Made a killing on DoorDash, So, but any fan that showed up at these watch parties that we'd have, like, so we were one of the few teams in the Call of Duty League that the players were actually trained at the facility, and so every month or so we'd have watch parties, free to attend, just show up. And any fan that showed up, that I'd meet, I would just give them my cell phone number and say, "Hey, talk to me anytime." And yeah, they would talk to me anytime. Sometimes they'd text me at 1 o'clock in the morning. You were alerting to roster movement, right? And they did a lot of roster. Why did you drop this guy? What'd you think?
Yeah.
I'll ask Murph when I get in the morning, you know. So, but I don't know. I think they thought it was so cool that like a director level guy was willing to, open the book for them and be transparent with them and let them feel like they have a seat at the table. Let them feel like this was their home.
Yeah.
Um,
You
and
create those
so
evangelists, you create those diehards.
yeah, the way I teach, marketing here at Endicott, I call it Grateful Dead marketing. Are you a deadhead? You're out in San Diego. Are you a deadhead?
Not quite
No.
dead, but I can understand the gist probably. And hey, Bill Walton and all that.
Yeah. Oh, R.I.P. legend.
Yeah.
So the thing, and there's been whole case studies, guys with PhDs who have written books about this stuff, about the brilliance of what they did. Um, at the time that they were ascending, you went on tour to sell an album, and these guys flipped the script and they made albums to sell tours,
Yeah.
right? And and then from that, they invited fans to show up and record the shows.
Yeah.
At a time when and it's obviously still the case where people are very like, hey, don't record. No, they invited the fans to show up and record. And from that, what emerged was this tape trading culture in the parking lots,
Yeah.
like, oh, hey, I got the 77 show in Boston. You got the 78 show in Denver. Yeah, cool. Right. And then allowing fans, not like big time corporate entities, but like small time independent artists to take that very iconic Dead branding and put their own artistic twist on it, like selling their own merch and
Yeah.
like knowing that every single collaboration is going to strengthen their own image,
Totally.
their own branding. You even see that now. One of my favorite T-shirt companies out there, Homage, they have they did this NBA Grateful Dead mashup last year. The Celtics one is literally the leprechaun that's a Grateful Dead bear. So like, but it's they empowered their most hardcore followers to feel like they had a stake in the growth of it.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're building any community, any size, I'm bullish on micro communities. By the way, to your point, I do think as people start to understand how easy it is to just flood the social media channels with hacky AI content,
Yeah.
that people like you and I are going to seek out small private communities more and more. So
Yeah.
I do see a lot of opportunity on that end, but I think the reality is you have to be willing to meet your community where they are,
Yeah.
and and for me, that includes like face to face. Hey, text me anytime. You might piss off my wife, but so be it. Like, because it makes them feel like they have a place where they can be themselves, right? And they have a place where they really actually have an outcome in the thing.
Totally. I definitely want to get into the weeds of esports marketing and branding of teams, but before we go too deep into that, I want to ask that the elephant in the room, the big picture question
Uh-oh.
of where esports was when you entered Oxygen, when you entered the industry, flying high. A lot of people were thinking esports was going to be this whatever several billions of dollars, and it still could be, but then we went through kind of a market correction maybe, and now it's kind of going to find its level, and maybe it's not going to be as big as the NFL, but it can be in other cases, and the fandom is there, but it's also more fragmented because of the nature of the titles and all that, and
Yeah.
Activision Blizzard and EA who owns this stuff. So like, what's just your perspective on what where things kind of not went wrong, but maybe like what led to that sort of quote unquote bubble and then the subsequent winter.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you finished my sentence because I was going to say, yeah, we call it esports winter, and I hear about it every week. But I think also if you talk to people over in South Korea and ask esports winter, they might say, well, we're already out of it, right? But they have a 30-year head start on
Yeah.
us. But I think I think there was a couple factors in play. One, live events are expensive, right? You think about the setup of a live esports event, right? Um, that's not something you can just, it's not like basketball, you can just roll out the ball and have fun. Like, you can't have the Wi-Fi, crap to bed, right? You can't
Yeah.
have any sort of server errors, right? You can't like the elect like you can't skimp on electricians. You can't skimp on the unions that set these things up, right? Like, and sometimes it can take out as many as 5 days to set up the whole thing, right?
Mhm.
So that's expensive to put on, and you see a lot of companies putting these on, and they don't always break even. So I think because I think you alluded to this, like when Overwatch League first formed, for instance, and they were talking about doing true home and homes.
Yeah.
Um, the infrastructure is not there to do something like that. But where I do think there is opportunities is like, a couple of years ago, Minnesota Roker, one of the Call of Duty League teams, would do these home series events where they would invite their opponents to come out and they'd play a bunch of games over the weekend at like a theater somewhere, like a 2,000 seat theater, and they'd invite all their fans to come out. And it was a super cool experience. Let me tell you something, man. Live esports, I tell people, I'm only going to have to ask you once because once you go, I'll never have to ask you to go again. Right.
Yeah.
We just had an awesome event here last month, the Six Invitational, which is one of the big R6 Siege
Mhm.
tournaments of the every year. First time they've ever done it in Boston, and that was the best crowd I've ever seen for an esports event in Boston, bar none.
Wow.
So live events are freaking special. It's where the casual fan becomes the loyalist. Okay, but they're also expensive to put on, and I don't think the model is totally predicated. It should be totally predicated on selling a bunch of sponsorships either, right? Like you need to, and so I think it's hard to make money. I think for whatever reason, I think you sometimes see orgs leaning. I don't know if I say too heavily or too early into the merch thing. Like when they let's be 100 thieves and we'll do random drops around Southern California, probably in your backyard there, Neil. Right? Like we'll do these like FOMO events when you show up and when they're gone. Right? They've been working like 2 decades on building that, right? And they talk about we want to be Optic. Optic's been doing content since 2006.
Wow.
Okay. So like it takes a long time to build that kind of community. And the one thing that this industry could use more of probably is patience with seeing things out. But to your point, right? COVID, everyone's indoors as a bubble. You have some impatient investors looking for a return that it isn't materializing as quickly as they thought it would or what they were led to believe it would, right? And so
Yeah.
you'll start asking questions. It's a complicated mess, but here's the thing, Neil. I have a hard time proselytizing doom about this whole thing when, okay, let's be honest. Whenever Grand Theft Auto decides to come out, whenever GTA 6 decides to come out, that is going to break every single sales record in the history of gaming. Do you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I hope so. They put so much time and effort into producing it. They better.
I've said this to 100 people. I've yet to hear someone disagree. Like that is going to shatter every sales record in the history of gaming when it comes out, right?
Oh yeah.
Uh, College Football 25, one of the best selling sports video games of all time.
Yep.
First month, I think they onboarded 5 million unique users to their server, right?
Yeah.
They made close to $500 million within like that first month, I think, right? Like I have a hard time looking at those numbers and saying this thing's in a doom loop. I just think new ideas, and this is a relatively new idea in America. They take a while to catch on, right? They never arrive cleanly, but I think if you play the long game, look, these communities are absolutely amazing. Um, look, I've worked in the NFL, I've worked in sports media, I've worked in tech. I've never met a community like esports that's been as inclusive, as open sourced. You like it's incredible, and so I just think if you believe in that community, you're gonna thrive in the long term because
Yeah,
the numbers are pointing one way. Um, my friend Chris Postle, Esports founder, he does a lot of really good research on the college scene. 90% or close to it of college students entering college are gamers, whether they want to admit it out loud or not.
totally.
77% of millennial parents, I forget where I pulled this data from, play with their kids at least once a week. I play Super Smash Bros. With my daughters every night. And it's
Totally.
awesome. Like this stuff is not going away. But one of the other problems I see, go back to the basketball analogy, like no one owns basketball, right?
Yeah,
Somebody owns
yeah,
Fortnite and they can change the rules, pull the plug, whatever, whenever they want. And that's terrifying for a lot of third parties trying to work within the esports ecosystem.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, so many interesting points there to touch on, and yes, to your point, like I mean, if anyone is skeptical of where esports can go, just show them a clip of 75,000 fans screaming in Korea or for some, for
Or Brazil last year, six invitational in Sao Paulo, 12,000 seat arena, sold out every night.
yeah,
People going nuts. I mean, look at any Rocket League tournament over in Europe. Like this stuff is not going away.
yeah. But you touched on a couple of things there. I want to double click into it. As much as I hate that term, double click. It's so cliche. But one is the nature of participation and equating, or not equating, but saying that because so many people do game and play games, that those are the most apt to develop into fans. And I want to touch on how relevant or how possible is that? How does that play out? And the other thing I want you to touch on too, because you mentioned it, we mentioned throughout this podcast. I've heard GTA, I've heard College Football 25. I've heard Rainbow Six. We talked about Overwatch, Fortnite. Like, what? How do you define an esports fan? Is it a cross-title fan, or is a fan of Overwatch similar to a fan of Counter Strike, similar to a fan of whatever of Grand Theft Auto or FIFA?
Now, to answer the latter question here, now, I mean, um, that's one of the difficulties with this is you cannot like if you own multiple different title orgs, right? You can't treat the fans with the same behavior,
Yeah,
right? Overwatch fans are different from Call of Duty fans, right? Our Six Siege fans are different from Fortnite fans, right? Different age demographics, different behaviors. Um, one of the real revelations. I'm a big email marketing guy, and everything in email marketing should be mobile first, just out of safety, right? You should always assume that 2/3 of your audience is just going to open on their phone instead of on a desktop. Well, the Overwatch fans we marketed to overwhelmingly opened on their desktop. And so it's probably because they're probably gaming, right? That's probably where they're active, right? So I think for traditional marketing, that's kind of a hard concept to understand that they might not always be mobile first. You should always still treat it as mobile first with your orientation, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
um, yeah. So yes, no, they're definitely different behaviors, and this is why I think the franchise model runs into problems. Is even at Boston Breach, like the amount of fans we had from all over the country, not just Boston, right? And that's kind of so to say, we're Boston's team. Well, oh, this guy's a fan of the Breach because they signed a certain player, right? We had fans in, at the Uprising, we had fans in Omaha, Nebraska because of players that we signed that they had followed when they play Overwatch, right? So that's also difficult to understand. That's why I'm not so bullish on the franchise scene. Like, yes, getting my esports students here, like what orgs they like, and it's I like Red Bull. Oh, I like Red Bull OG because I like their League of Legends team. Nothing to do with like where they're based out of, right?
yeah.
So um
Well,
so
and
that's what
also
makes it
just because
difficult.
you like their League of Legends team doesn't necessarily mean that you're also going to then tune in for CS:GO or whatever other games they may have.
Exactly. I love watching live Rainbow Six, by the way, because it's you asked me my favorite sport. I'm a football guy through and through, but and I love watching the interaction with the coaches and the players because the guy's got a headset and a clipboard. He's treating it like the way Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator for Patriots, would talk to his quarterbacks. He's got the big diner menu, like Andy Reid, like right. I just love that. And we had a sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but so we had a Rainbow Six team here last month, boot camping in our lab at Endicott, Team Secret, and they're studying like 200 different plays that they may execute when it comes time to the tournament, right? They might use 20% of the playbook, similar to the NFL, right? But yeah, there's a lot of thinking that goes in there. So I love watching that because of how much strategy there is in it. It feels like the ultimate chess game. So sorry, just a reminder.
Is that what these brands are?
Yeah.
Whether from your time at auction or what you're seeing in the industry now, is it wrong? Is it the wrong goal to make someone try to be a fan of all the titles and be a fan of the brand just because whatever Endicott, you might be a fan of Endicott's whatever basketball team, and so therefore you're gonna be a fan of basketball, you're also gonna be a fan of volleyball, you're also gonna be a fan of field hockey, whatever the sports you guys may sponsor.
Yeah. No, it's
Is that
not
the wrong model?
it's not like college sports, right? I'm a UMass grad.
Hmm.
I get fired up if the women's lacrosse team makes a run in the NCAA tournament. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Like our hockey team won the national title a couple of years ago. I'm fired up
Yeah.
about that. We're rejoining the MAC in football, and they just released a schedule. We have 4 games of MACtion, right? The
Love it.
midweek games. I'm fired up about that,
Yeah.
right? It's different in esports, right? And I think where you see the most successful orgs in North America, they really only pick a couple titles they go on,
Mhm.
right? They're not spraying 7 or 8 titles and seeing which one sticks. They're very intentional, very deliberate about which titles they pick and understanding those audiences.
Yeah.
Like I always say in my classes here, don't spray and pray, point and shoot, right? If
Yeah.
you believe, right, going back to the Grateful Dead marketing, and I love this concept that Kevin Kelly, the great entrepreneur, wrote years ago about 1,000 true fans,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if you've ever read this, right?
But very familiar with Kevin. With the
Yeah,
top-
yeah. So he has this one of his all time most read blog posts is about this idea that if you have 1,000 fans that spend $100 a year on your work, that's six figures in your pocket,
Yeah.
right? And so the idea is that your most loyal fans are it's more worth it to focus in on those loyalists because they're going to end up spending more money with you over the long run.
Yeah.
So similar concept, right? Again, you talk about micro communities, perfect example, right? So I think, yeah, I mean, you're better off really focusing on a couple titles, and that's where they have a lot of success, right?
Yeah.
Who of Thieves focuses on a couple titles. You might see their Call of Duty team, their Valorant team, but they're not going after every flavor of the month.
Yeah.
Uh, Marvel Rivals is a big talk right now, right? Is this something that's going to fizzle out, or is it going to stay consistent because you're seeing usage drop off? I'm bullish long term. I just think the IP behind Marvel is such a monster that you can financially sustain that, but who knows, right? Does that mean we should start a Marvel Rivals team tomorrow? I don't know.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out that here at Endicott. What are we going to do about Marvel Rivals in the fall? Because it's coming like a hurricane. But I'm sorry, and you're gonna have to.
Yeah.
You're
Just
gonna,
touch
your
on
first question,
that translation
that was
of.
a great question too. Just run it back for me real quick.
Oh
That was
no,
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Touch on that if it's the right thesis to say that because so many people game, and if you are a gamer, therefore you are
gotcha.
apt to become a fan.
Yeah. So just from the college lens, I think if you talk to the directors at the most sustainable, I think college esports programs, they are equal parts casual versus competitive.
Mhm.
Some of these bigger schools, like you look at like a Oklahoma or a Michigan State, something like that, they may have a couple thousand members of their Discord community, and only a couple dozen scholarship athletes, and those scholarships might be like a partial, like a 2,500, 5,000, I don't know. Um, but you really, and so here at Endicott, I mean, um, I'm really trying to grow. We're really trying to grow the women's side. But a big part of my success here is measured by, our events. Are we getting casual fans to come in here? Are we getting
Yeah.
people to sign up for our memberships, to the lab? I'll tell an example here because he's sitting directly to my left here. But so our lab that you're looking at right here, we're in the center of the Student Union, which is the most heavily trafficked area on campus. Right above the lab here is a Starbucks.
Mhm.
And our Fortnite team went from 3 members in the fall. We had a very, very talented, he's a captain of our Fortnite team, president of Esports Management Club. He's unreal ranked. He's good enough to win cash cups. It was him, and we really struggled to find bodies. We found, so it was a co-ed team, a female player who was not ranked as highly as him, and then another one of his buddies. And he basically carried, he counted for 85% of the damage. We ended up finishing top 15 in ECAC out of like 150 some odd schools. All the Starbucks kids are on our Fortnite team now, because they were working at Starbucks. I come by every day, get a coffee. Then they come down here during their lunch break, and they're playing on the PCs between classes.
Yeah.
And one of them, Sam, just got a Victor Royale last night for the first time all season. And 6 months ago, I was just bumping him every day, buying a coffee from him at Starbucks. So the casuals, as they enjoy this place more, they're going to want to learn how they can take the next step, right?
So if you're building a esports team, pro team,
Yeah.
or in college, whatever it is,
Yeah.
is it accurate to say, well, like there is 85% or whatever percentage of Americans play esports or play video games. Therefore, our total addressable market is that large. If we just get 1% of that, we are billionaires. Like, is that accurate, or is it not? Is there more nuance to that to say, okay, well, just because everyone plays video games doesn't necessarily mean that they are target audience to become fans?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think it's. I'll just say from our lens, like I've just kind of looked at it like where I don't have the luxury of just offering kids scholarships to build teams. I have to, adjust based on what people are feverish about here. Last year, so we didn't have this lab last year. It's only open in September, and we were competing collegiately despite not having our own lab and no on-campus facility, no gang PCs here. So we had 7 kids on the Overwatch team lugging their own PCs from home, patching it on the Wi-Fi, and hoping it doesn't crap out in the middle of a match. We made the round of 16 of the ECAC playoffs. Okay, we had we had players of the month. We had like finalists for player of the season. We beat a team in our first playoff game. We took a team that hadn't gone to Map 5 all season to their first Map 5, and they were just going by the seat of their pants, right? That's nothing to do. I don't know. It was like a labor of love for them. And so coming into the season, I thought all right, well, we're going to really blow it out with Overwatch. Like this is going, and then overwhelmingly we open up the lab and everyone here is playing Fortnite, and we go from 3 players on the Fortnite team, just one trio, just swinging by the seat of their pants every week, to 16 Fortnite players playing twice a week competitively and taking it deathly seriously. And so I kind of just have to react to what the environment is giving me here. So I'm going to go into the summer and being like, oh, we gotta really blow out Fortnite. And then some student is going to show up here and he's going to be really highly ranked in Valorant. And suddenly the Valorant team's going to show up. Or, since we had Team Secret boot camp here, now a Rainbow Six Siege team is mobilizing.
Yeah.
Saw the athletes working here and they were like, this is so cool. So I don't have a great answer for that. What the market is.
We're thinking about esports marketing in general, for professional teams. How are they thinking about their funnels to cultivate fans?
I think the rules are again. I think the rules are evergreen, right? Let me give you my manifesto here. Okay, this is my. I live by 6 rules. All right, we'll go one by one here. Brand makes demand. So, and what is brand? Brand, it's a lot of things. There's a lot of sentiments out there. It ultimately boils down to what are people saying about you when you're not in a room, right? Yeah. What is that reputation? Rule 2, community makes commerce. I mean, right? I mean, it's what we've been talking about. You don't have, right? That's where you're gonna make your bones, right? Story is supreme. I used to say story is king. I want to be more gender inclusive, but the most consistent stocks on Wall Street are the best storytelling companies, right?
Oh yeah.
Who's done it better than Apple, right?
Totally.
I mean, Nike took a little bit of lumps last year, but goodness, as a Celtics fan, I just love the Jason Tatum "Don't Stop This Believing" story. It's my own. That's my as an aside. Like the fact that like the Celtics revenge tour is not the dominating storyline in the NBA this year. You can't complain about the ratings and then not really acknowledge that. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then I say, don't spray and pray, point and shoot, like we've been talking about.
Yep.
Um. Immersions over impressions, right? And I think when you get into sponsors and partners, right, I think they're getting smarter about where they're spending their marketing, right? And I think impressions aren't enough. They want to actually see how this is contributing to the ROI, right? I think just putting awareness plays out there without no actual goals. Let's just raise awareness. I don't know, man, that can get you fired. But if you can actually point to an and how you and that's why you take it a layer deeper. And that's where I think Fortnite is really brilliant with this immersive experience stuff. We can get in a second. Like the more of an immersive experience you can create, the more they're going to convert. Immersion is conversion. So let's say immersions over impressions, right? How can you take that one step deeper? And then the final thing is sell visions, not delusions. And again, this is where I think the Overwatch League fumbled the bag. Is this idea of home and homes, and we're gonna blow it out. It's gonna be bigger than the NFL, and it's good. That's a delusion. But where like Overwatch Championship Series, I think has a chance is it feels more holistic. Like we're gonna, it's gonna feel like almost a Premier League relegation promotion kind of system. Like anybody can kind of come from the top. That's a sustainable. That's a system that feels like you can get behind. Like it comes from a place of more common sense, more aligned with how esports fans behave. So those are kind of my 6 rules, and I think you understand like why I think that applies to anything, whether you're in esports marketing, whether you're in traditional sports marketing, whether you're selling this chair behind me. I think that there's some rules that are kind of evergreen here.
Love it. No, that's great stuff. I want to like write down. I want to put that.
But that's how I twisted this conversation. But
I want to put those rules on a poster in my office right now.
I have it tattooed in my office wall. So
I have a couple more minutes left here with Brendan Hall, esports coordinator for Endicott College. This is so much fun. Something that we touched on. It's funny too, Brendan. I've like barely looked at my notes at all just because it's been a great conversation. It's been organic.
I kind of just took this conversation hostage and threw out your notes. I'm sorry, man.
No,
because you had some great questions lined up for me. I don't know where we went, but
one thing we touched on even before we started recording is the nature of the relationship between the esports player on a team and the brand itself, and how because a lot of these players are so young, they burn out quickly oftentimes too. The brands know that sometimes these players don't stick around that long, and fans may know that as well. And so like what is that dichotomy of developing fans of players, developing fans of the brand, so that when the roster changes, you're still fans of that team, and it's the nature of these kind of players as mercenaries.
Yeah. I think I don't have a great solution to the mercenary issue. Like that's a matter of like how they're classified. Are they, like, are these guys on 1099s or what? What you can control is what your leadership is doing. And I think part of the reason why 100 Thieves is one of the most desired esports brands here in this country is, when their CEO, Nadeshot, streams, he's answering actual questions in the chat, like giving people a peek behind how the business of esports works. And people think that's really cool. Another great example of a great org is NRG. And they have an awesome newsletter. They also sunshine a lot of their fan data. If you go to NRG Insights, it's on their website. So they'll put out infographics every month about like some stuff they found about their fans. Like, one of the most interesting ones I think they put out the last couple of years was about League of Legends. And 40% of their League of Legends fans in the last 2 years, or who've become fans the last 2 years, were first introduced to it, not through playing the game itself, but the content, including that awesome Netflix show that they have, Arcane, about League of Legends. And so, there's a similar vein with F1, right? One of the most popular channels for new fan adoption in this country is the Drive to Survive series on Netflix. Amazing show, right? So, but NRG sunshines a lot of their fan data, and I think that builds a lot of trust with their audience. That the way they're thinking about this. So I think, I think how you should be having someone in your leadership being public facing, talking to the fans, giving them a seat at the table, right? Making them feel like they're a part of it, and so um, that should just be a given, and so that helps kind of that helps against you being at the mercy of like some big name player. Like that helps brand be consistent, right? And so you're not, um, hanging on a whim based on who's signing where. You have an established brand that's going to stand for some things.
Yeah, interesting too, because we see that play out in the traditional stick and ball sport to some degree as well. Like when
Yeah,
LeBron leaves the Heat and goes to the Lakers or whatever, goes back to the Cavs, some fans go with him. When Messi leaves PSG and goes to Barcelona or goes to Inter Miami, fans travel with him, and that can play out in esports, and that can be a feature or that can be a bug.
yeah, but don't you think like the Green Bay Packers, okay, or the Buffalo Bills? Like people are talking about, we're a couple days away from free agency in the NFL, and you hear people around here already being miserable. Well, nobody wants to come play in Foxborough because it's where the heck is Foxborough? It's cold here and the taxes suck and all that stuff. But man, the taxes suck in New York too. And I mean, why are the Buffalo Bills able to attract big names, right? Why are the Green Bay Packers? Why do they have a 30-year season ticket waiting list? It's not like Green Bay is freaking Miami, right?
Yeah.
And I think well, you look at their brand, look at the Bills Mafia, right? Like those fans, like they feel like it's their own thing, right? And you see the love from the players. What I mean, Josh Allen gets engaged to an A-list Hollywood actress, and someone puts a billboard up in Buffalo congratulating them on their engagement, right? Like they don't do
So
that in Boston,
it's a community that you want to be part of if you're not part of it yet, and it attracts fans
Yeah,
in that sense.
yeah, and so that Bills Mafia thing, and full disclosure, my in-laws are from Western New York, so I've been hearing about this whole mystique since I started dating my wife 12 years ago. Okay, first 5 years of my marriage was great. Then they drafted Josh Allen. Now it sucks. Okay. Anyways, but yeah, like don't you look at the Bills Mafia? Don't you look at the Cheeseheads in Green Bay and think, despite the terrible weather and I don't know if it's a great tax haven, but like they're gonna be thrive long term because of that community.
Yeah, you want to develop that, like the whole Jerry Seinfeld line, like you want fans to cheer for laundry because then that will stand
Yes,
the test of time.
yes. Great Seinfeld bit, by the way. Great.
One last thing we bring before we get to the shareable stat, and then we'll get to our quick hitter as quick hitters as well. Like what should the pathways to develop fans look like? Like what is the ideal funnel, or what do you see playing out, or what do you hope to see play out? Like is it, hey, I'm gonna see some highlights on TikTok, and then I'm gonna check in a live event, and then become a fan of a team, or I'm gonna really get into a Discord community because I want to get better at the game that I'm playing, and then see some top players. Like what is that, like that initial touch point, and then moving up the chain a little bit look like, or what should it look like?
Yeah, you mentioned Discord. That is like a core element of any strategy in esports, right? When you talk about the message boards, we talk about the hardcore, like that's
Yeah.
where I think you're going to find your highest percentage of hardcore fans. I'm in way too many Discord communities as it is. Like this is where they are. Like that's and when we talk about private community and seeking out micro community, right? And
But
how
if that's the destination, where does that journey start to get them there?
good question. I think so. One thing I think I'll borrow an analogy I was told years ago from one of my mentors about the Celtics, for instance. Okay, 99% of Celtics fans are never actually going to see a game at the Garden,
Yeah.
right? Their fan base is global. It's massive. Almost half their fans are outside of the United States, and that tracks with the Lakers and are the big. But and this is where the Celtics were geniuses, way ahead of their time. Is like because they really loaded up on content early and social media managers and because they know that every single piece of every slice of life they capture of a Jason Tatum, of a Jalen Brown, That is going to strengthen someone's relationship parasocially halfway across the world,
Yeah.
right? And they may not buy a ticket to the Garden, but they'll buy merch, right? They'll buy other things, right? They'll feel like they have a vicarious relationship with these players that they may never meet in real life. So very similar thing follows with esports, right? With the creators, with the when I would ask people at our watch parties, like, dude, you could watch this from your home on Twitch. Why'd you drive 3 hours from Maine to come to Foxborough? On to say, well, yeah, but you guys have methods here, and I like watching him play Call of Duty on Twitch. Like, that's a real thing,
Yeah.
okay? And so the more you can establish relationships with those fans who are never might not meet in person through content, through the storytelling, you know, that's going to go a long ways. And again, I pull up the stats of people adopting F1 fandom through the Netflix show, right? People wanting to play League of Legends because they like watching Arcane, right? Like it's a real thing. And so that's where I'd start. Whether the answer is TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Here's the thing: is whether like a TikTok or whatever survives, thrives, whatever. What people are missing is the idea of why it was good in the first place. It's this idea that you can learn a lot in a 15-second video, right? And today's consumers, get a lot out of what you would call microbyte content, right? And so whether the answer is going on LinkedIn, going on TikTok, whatever, it's just the idea that the more of a relationship you can establish with these people through your content. And I think it's easier than ever to establish that with the For You feeds now, where it's not so much predicated on who you follow, right?
Mhm.
I just think that's going to be the way to go. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that the through line to all this is you have to really create these human relationships, human stories, and that that sense of community and that sense of like entertainment too to some degree. Like it's interesting to me that the it, it's not necessarily the most elite players that develop the biggest audience. It's the players that combine their skill with personality and with a fan base that gets into the community side as well. So I think there's a lot of themes here that are all kind of come full circle as we think about what the future could look like for fan development in esports.
absolutely.
All right, Brandon, we're gonna have some more fun with you in our flashes segment. First episode shareable stat coming up right now. Awesome, interesting stuff there from Brendan Hall, again, esports coordinator at Endicott College. Super interesting areas that we dove into. But we're gonna have some more fun with him and hear some more great stories and anecdotes and insights from him in our flashes segment. So stick around for that. But first, this episode's shareable stat. And so the shareable stat, I chose one that's really relevant to today's conversation about esports. You heard Brendan talk a lot about the success of 100 Thieves in the podcast interview. And the shareable stat today is 1.4 million. That is the average number of followers for 100 Thieves across the four of the major platforms: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. 1.4 million. What makes 100 Thieves so popular and so successful, I guess, in the greater esports space is that they really are, if you look at their content, if you look at their overall branding, their website, their social, they are just as much a lifestyle gaming brand and platform as they are, professional esports. So as we think about, even in this conversation with Brendan, we talked a little bit about esports versus gaming, and someone that is a fan of gaming, they play games, they might watch their favorite talent or creators or athletes play games as well, but are they also then tuning in for the Fortnite World Championships or whatever it be, or might have a favorite esports professional team? There's a line between being the most successful esports player of a given title and being the most successful creator that happens to play that game as their main way to engage and to interact with fans on Twitch or on YouTube, whatever it might be. If you look at the 100 Thieves content across their socials, what you'll notice is very few of their thumbnails are featuring the video game themselves. Even a lot of their content's not necessarily featuring gameplay. It is always, almost always a human, a person that it's about. And they might be talking about, their favorite games of all time, or behind the scenes of a game, or looking at some of the top kills in the game, or talking about things that are only tangentially related to gaming. They're ultimately personalities, and building their brands and interacting with fans that just gaming happens to be the content that they talk about. As you think about difference between gaming and esports, even just the way that Brendan kind of talked about what it means to build up a fan base, and how you drive these human connections, being the true center of what makes these things successful. You really look at 100 Thieves, look at Optic Gaming, some of these other brands that are out there, even FaZe Clan, that they are just as much thinking about how do we make a connection with fans. And it's not just, who has the most kills in the game, or who's winning the championships. It's who do our fans want to spend time with? And you look at some of the most successful gamers, oftentimes they are not the really elite pros who are winning championships. They are, again, just using gaming. Look at Kai Cenat. Look at some of these gamers who are really big on Twitch. Again, not all of them are seasoned pros on competitive teams. They're just using gaming as a way to as the main the main content around which their engagement with fans sits. So super interesting to think about. Again, look at some of those brands. They're doing really cool stuff. Just truly building a lifestyle brand with gaming kind of at the center. Gaming's not going anywhere. Esports, is probably not going anywhere either. Who knows how it's going to look in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, but certainly something, of course, that we talked about a lot today in this interview, and you're going to hear more from Brendan in our flash segment. So again, one more time, this episode's shareable stat: 100 Thieves across Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. On average, they have 1.4 million followers. So check it out, think about it, talk about it, ponder it. More importantly, stick around, because here's some more good stuff with Brendan Hall of Endicott College. Back in this episode of Shareable Stat, and I'm joined once again by Brendan Hall. He is the esports coordinator for Endicott College. Brendan, we could have gone like twice as long as we did in that initial interview. There's so many good topics to touch on. You are full of knowledge and insight and great stories, great examples, and I loved all of it. But now we're going to have some fun with you in the flashes segment. Are you ready to go?
Ready as ever.
Let's do it. All right. This one, I'm psyched to hear the answer to this one, because I don't know what you're going to say. Your favorite story you worked on for the Boston Globe, and also the favorite story you worked on with ESPN Boston.
Oh boy. Man, I still go back to this one story at the Globe. I follow the local high school basketball team the entire day of the state final, Watertown High School. And I got to be in the locker room with them. And it was just kind of one of these like day in the life stories. And I got to learn some really awesome backstories with these guys, and how much like something like a little high school basketball state title actually meant to their lives. The point guard I learned was an adopted orphan from Ethiopia,
Wow.
who at 5 years old was like selling gum on off the street carts to support his family, and then he was adopted by a couple.
Ew.
And then another player on the team, his dad had been in prison for 10 years, and basketball was how he coped with everything, growing up in kind of a rough home. And again, the great thing about high school sports is there's a story like that in every community.
Totally.
Some really encapsulating human interest. Right? So I got to the human interest pieces I did for the Globe like that were just
Sounds
amazing.
great. Yeah.
ESPN, boy, how can you not go? I covered 2 Stanley Cups
Yeah.
in 2013. Just absolutely amazing. Just covering any sort of final, NBA Finals, Super Bowl, World Series, Stanley Cup. It's just the pageantry, everything. It's just an unbelievable experience. I think probably the best, my like most memorable Bruins game I can think of from my time, and it was the first game after the marathon bombing, when Rene Rancourt, the anthem singer, dropped the mic, and 18,000 fans on their feet singing the anthem. I think I actually put my head down and cried a little bit standing in the Zamboni entrance, trying to get a picture of the ice. Those are the ones you remember most,
Totally.
honestly.
Yeah, you feel that one in your bones for sure. Number two, this one, it might have been this answer might be the player that Mario Cristobal flew up to see, but it could be someone else. Tell me the most impressive high school football player you saw in person.
So it's not actually that guy, but I'm gonna throw because I mean I always think of AJ Dillon at Lawrence Academy, who's a monster for the Packers. But I'm gonna go with the highest paid offensive guard in the NFL right now, Chris Lindstrom, Shepherd Hill High School, Dudley, Massachusetts.
PC.
Um, this guy, reason I say he's most impressive. This guy was 230 pounds in high school, ragdolling guys that were 100 pounds heavier than him.
Whoa.
He was what you would call country strong. Okay. And, his dad is in the Hall of Fame at BU. His uncle played for the Chiefs for a decade. He had some pedigree, but like he was faster than his own running backs, and his running backs ended up running track in college. There's literally highlight plays on highlight. He's sprinting downfield faster than his running backs, kicking out somebody 30 yards downfield. He had a like after the whistle mean streak to him. Like choir boy, take home to meet your parents. But like, boy, he was gonna chip get into you after the whistle, and
Yeah.
really, and he only had one offer coming out of college, or coming out of high school, sorry, and it was BC,
Yeah.
and I just think people were nervous about the size, which is ridiculous because in his first month at BC, I think he put on 20 pounds of muscle, and he started as a true freshman from day one, 50 straight games, whatever, and he's the highest paid player in the NFL now, or highest paid offensive guard in the NFL now. He's a back-to-back All-Pro for the Falcons. He also played tennis in high school, so his footwork was phenomenal. So,
Definitely a guy that it sounds like you just saw him and you're like, that guy's different.
first time I ever saw him, like, holy words I don't want to say on this. You know what I mean? Like,
Hell yeah.
yeah,
This should be a fun one for you, Brendan. Tell me the video game that you were best at growing up and the one you're best at now, if it's different.
best at. Oh my goodness. As much as I love to say GoldenEye, I was unbeatable as Captain Falcon in Super Smash Brothers, the original one for Nintendo
Yeah.
64. Now, when I have time, I like to think I've gotten pretty good at Fortnite.
Mhm.
I'll never win a tournament, or anything like that, but it's definitely the game I have most fun with, and I think I've gotten best at in recent years.
Which game do you think is most amenable to attracting the new casual fan? Like, what's the easiest entry point game for a fan to become to enter the space?
I'd say probably Rocket League
Yeah.
or Fortnite. And reason I say that is both those games are free,
Mhm.
and then they make their money back 20-fold with in-game purchases.
Yeah.
The collaboratives, the skins. I think the Kicks cosmetic for Fortnite is going to be a home run for them. When we talk about immersive experience, right? Wearing Nike Air Jordans in game and then seeing them out in real life. Oh,
Hell yeah.
I really do. But I'm really bullish on that. But yeah, Rocket League is definitely, I would say, the most accessible. We got Bay State games coming here in June, and it's their first foray into esports, and their entry is going to be Rocket League. That's where I would go.
Oh man, we could do a whole nother podcast on the economy of in-game purchases and micro purchases. That's or
Oh,
microtransactions.
yeah, of which I have several opinions. Yes.
Number four, we won't get your opinions on microtransactions maybe later in this Q&A. But I want to ask you the number one tip you would give today to an aspiring journalist.
Um, lean in. Lean in. The one great thing about COVID for me is it completely eradicated any irrational fears I might have about reaching out to somebody cold and just saying, "Hey, I heard you're the guy behind this cool project I saw. What if I ask some questions?" You would be surprised what you get just by asking,
Yeah.
honestly. And the reason I couch this at COVID is like, right, because that's when all these networking events started going virtual.
Mhm.
And it became easier for me to just message people like, "Hey, so you speak, I want to ask some questions." Like if I had met these people in person, I'm boxing somebody out at the end of the stage trying to
Yeah.
get their attention for 10
Very
seconds.
true.
Right. Where if I can reach out to them virtually, I can get an hour at a time. So lean in, lean in. Don't be afraid. I'd also say this, get your reps and don't really care about who it's for, what it's for. And I'm not saying work for free, right? Everybody needs to get paid, but think about think about it from the lens of you're getting reps because you need reps, right? Everybody starts small somewhere. I started as a 17-year-old answering the phones at my local newspaper, the Gardner News. Okay, and they let me write a couple stories every now and then, right? Everybody starts somewhere small. Just get your reps and really, really also focus on getting good mentorship. That first, whatever your first stop is, there's a lot of great mentors, a lot of great editors. When you take the credential out of where you're working, um, a lot of great mentors in places you might least expect it.
Yeah.
And when you get to my age and you've got bad habits, they're harder to unlearn than if you were in your 20s. So those are the three things I would say.
Yeah, thoughtful stuff there. And heck, cold outreach is how you and I are talking today. So I love it.
There
I'm
you
a
go. Best
practitioner of
example,
it.
right? You're making my
Oh
point.
yeah. Number five here, Brandon. This one could get controversial, perhaps. Tell me the gaming title with the most diehard fans. Which game title has the most avid fans?
Wow. I might start a war with this one. I might, like I know, oh, League of Legends, oh, they did this, they did that, they got Little Nas X playing their championship game. Those Rainbow Six Siege fans that I saw last month in Boston are something. And if you're familiar with the game, right, it's so Rainbow Six is the whole franchise is based off a Tom Clancy novel, The Rainbow Six, right,
Yep.
about a group of counterterrorism experts going, and so it's a like tactical military game. So just, I guess what I'm saying is, imagine the cosplaying that goes on at a
Oh
Rainbow
yeah.
Six event. Um, I it's something. But they're fun. I feel like I feel like that's a fan base that's edgy without like being totally toxic, and that's a difficult line to toe. I think it's sometimes in gaming, but like, yeah, those guys are awesome. One example I can think of is they right before the championship game at the Six Invitational, they did a State of the Union, like unveiling like the next iteration of Siege, and they're sunshining their data. Like, here's how much we've here's how many permabans we've done. Here's how much we're cutting down on cheaters, and you start hearing fans chanting, "F you cheaters!" Clap, 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 clap. F you cheat. Like, they're awesome. I love those fans, and I don't even play the game. I just love watching it. So
That's
that would be
great.
my case.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like the passion, but with purpose a little bit too, and not just
Yes,
like you
that's a
said,
good way
not
to put it.
toxic.
That's a much more polite way to put it than I did. Yeah.
Number six for you. I mean, I think back, and I want to say like Robert Morris, maybe the first one that got on my radar.
Yes.
But tell me if you look around the nowadays, excluding Endicott, which you're building a good program there. Tell me the
Appreciate it.
college with the best esports program in the country.
Wow. There's a couple directions I'm gonna go. Um, I think you look at what Syracuse just built their facility that opened in January. That just reset the game. Um, I'm gonna make a shout to my guy Doc Haskell over at Boise State University.
Oh, nice.
They have a really impressive program. That's a guy who, man, every conversation with him, it's like going to Planet Dagobah to talk to Yoda. He's just so wise. He's such full of wisdom, and he has a great philosophy with recruiting. That's a program that really does it the right way. I think. I think you look at other places like I'm going to give a shout to the University of Akron. I think they do some really unique stuff there. That's great. Um, I'm going to give out to my guys at Shenandoah. Um, we just hired one of their grad assistants to be an analyst for us on our Overwatch team, and my team has consistently said it's unlike any VOD review they've ever done in their life. So that's a program that really equips kids to contribute beyond just gaming
Oh
in
yeah.
so many ways. So I got to give a major shout out to my guys at Shenandoah University down in Virginia. So
Some great calls there. Hey, my cousin's graduate from Shenandoah, so I will
there you
definitely
go. There you
support that.
go.
Number seven, for you, tell me the esports team whose social media we should go check out now and why. And same if you have an esports player who is kicking ass on social that we should look at.
Man. Um, yeah, I like what 100 Thieves does on socials. There's so many directions I could go with this one, man. I know we've been talking about those guys a lot, but they really do great stuff. I just think, not agnostic of gaming specific, but like Red Bull, just everything Red Bull does with their Instagram, all of their different channels, it's so next level. Just the stunts they do, and Red Bull is unique in that it kind of runs kind of what I was talking about, impressions and emergence. They're really about impressions, and hey, what's going to get eyeballs? They're Red Bull, they can get away with that, but like, that's really what they're going for. And so what that does and how it feels creativity with the content they put out, I think really says a lot. So I would lean into anything Red Bull, really, with what they do. They're one of the standard bearers in this industry.
Hell yeah. Oh, definitely some good call outs there. All right,
Yes,
Brendan,
sir.
we're getting to, I always have to ask a food question. So this might be the hardest question I'm going to ask you. The best meal, if I come out there and we hang out in the greater Boston area, the best meal to get in the greater Boston area and where to get it.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Um, First things first.
Besides the
Well,
wings at that gaming center, besides those wings at the gaming center, of
well,
course.
let's do first things first. I'm going to say something that's going to get me smoked here, but I actually think Connecticut's got better food than Boston, and that
Ooh,
will get you like beat up six ways a Sunday around here. But we're here in the North Shore. Food Network is always in Beverly at some different shop somewhere. I'm gonna give two quick shout outs to two places down the road from here at Endicott. One is Nick's Roast Beef, the original North Shore roast beef. If you go to North Shore, Massachusetts, there's all these amazing little roast beef sandwich chains. But Nick's is the standard bearer, in my opinion. And you got to do it three ways. So a three-way roast beef is mayo, cheese, and barbecue sauce. So, and then the other one I'm going to give a shout out is a sub shop in downtown Beverly. It's absolutely amazing called Super Sub. I think their steak bomb is better than anything you can find in Philadelphia. I swear to you. Okay, so that's where I would go.
very
Uh,
nice.
and then I'm going to give one more shout out to my old stomping grounds at UMass, Antonio's Pizza. What I just said about Connecticut, this might actually be the best slice in New England. So,
Ooh, I will. I'll pass the word on to my compatriots in New Haven about that.
sir,
Number nine for you, coming down the wire here with Brendan Hall of Endicott College. Tell me the most compelling or important esports story or narrative, however way you want to define it, that doesn't get enough visibility. Like, what's something that we should be talking more about?
how about us? No, no.
Uh,
Yeah, I think people need to start paying more attention to just the growth of the women's side of gaming. There's a lot of look. Our student body here at Endicott is more than two-thirds female. We have a very robust nursing program here, and so that fuels a lot of that. But women game too, and they have great, amazing stories. And it's
yeah.
one of my big focuses here is growing the women's side of esports, and we don't talk about the women's side enough. There's a lot of women in this industry doing amazing things. So
Great call out. Great call
yeah.
for sure. All right, we're gonna end with a really fun one.
Uh-oh.
Brendan, tell me your Mount Rushmore of video games. So that's four
Goldeneye.
video games
Number
that
one. Number one is number one is Goldeneye. Goldeneye. It's the reason we're all here.
slap fight only, slap only.
Slappers only, man. Slappers only. Goldeneye. That's the first. And then I'll go. The first game I ever fell in love with as a kid is Sonic the Hedgehog. This
Hell
is a
yeah.
whole franchise, and we talk about storytelling, and my kids now are in love with Sonic the way I was years ago, and it's because of those movies with
Hell
Jim
yeah.
Carrey. Okay. Um, Mount Rushmore, man. Oh boy.
Got
Uh,
GoldenEye at the farm. We got Sonic.
I'm gonna go Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Oh yeah. Give me Goldfinger all day with the soundtrack
Yeah,
too.
look, that single-handedly rocket shipped the whole skateboarding industry.
Hell yeah.
Quite honestly, no joke, no joke. Same with GoldenEye. If it weren't for GoldenEye, I don't think the James Bond franchise would be what it is today.
Holy.
I got case in point. 2 months, that game comes out, and then 2 months later, Tomorrow Never Dies is the number one selling movie in the country, and it's a very stupid, terrible movie. So, you point that right there. Boy, the fourth one. Um, I think historians are going to be very kind to Fortnite.
Mhm.
I really think that the model is a great example for the future. And I could go on a 2 hour tangent about that, but I think that game really. I think flip the script on what a first person shooter could be when you think about the perceptions of first person shooters, the violence and stuff, right?
Yeah,
And just completely flip the script on that and really open a lot of eyes to why it's not just products that win, but it's product ecosystems that win. And I think Fortnite has probably the best ecosystem out there for gaming.
a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I think we constructed a great Mount Rushmore of video games. That's
Ah,
someone's there.
appreciate it.
All right, Brendan, you made it through the flashes segment. Now your chance to take over the podcast for a moment and tell us your social media all-star follow. It can be a newsletter, Twitter, whatever platform you want to shout out. Just tell us who they are and why we should follow them.
Well, first of all, you should follow me.
Naturally, yeah,
I'm great.
we're
I'm
gonna get
great.
to
You can
your
follow
plug.
me at B Hall Writes, BHALLWRITES. I'm gonna give a couple shout outs. One, if you're in marketing and you're not subscribing to Seth Godin's daily newsletter,
Yeah,
you're missing out. That should be a no brainer. I love what my guys at Front Office Sports do with their daily newsletter. It's really what a newsletter, when you talk about like daily, like news, like not a particular blow talk, like that's what a great newsletter should look like. Um, I'm gonna give a shout out again. If you're in marketing, you're not following this guy Dave Gerhardt on LinkedIn. I think
yeah,
you're missing
I've come
out
across them.
on conversations. Um, he's mostly focused on B2B, but let me tell you, B2B is the best baptism into marketing if you're just getting in marketing because it's so relationship intensive.
Yeah,
And he's dropping truth bombs all the time there that I screenshot and capture and put in my swipe file. So there's a couple all stars right there. I could give you a ton, but those are the ones that come off the
hell
top of the
yeah.
head.
Some great ones to call out there. And then
Yeah.
follow Brendan, as you mentioned, at B Hall Writes. Anything else you want to shout out? Where should we find information on Endicott's Esports? Any of the places you want to send our listeners?
Yeah, you can follow us Endicott Esports at Endicott Esports. Just like it's spelled and sounds. I'm also going to shout out our podcast on if you look up on Spotify, Goalcast Endicott Esports. We've done 17 episodes so far. Maybe you can be in a future episode here, Neil. We're also on YouTube at Endicott Esports and on Twitch. If you watch on Tuesday and Thursday nights, we do what we call Gull Zone, where we're streaming every single Fortnite duo and trio competing, and we go between end games like it's NFL Red Zone. We call
Oh,
it Gull
super
Zone.
cool.
So we're very proud of that. It's very cool. But yeah,
That's awesome.
everything for Endicott is just at Endicott Esports. We also have a Substack, Endicott Esports.substack.com. But yeah, a lot of ways to find us.
Check out what they're doing. It's really cool to think that Brendan is building this program up from scratch virtually, and it just gave us so much good information today and so much wisdom, Brendan. And I really appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate you, man.
Loved being able to connect with Brendan Hall of Endicott College. Again, their esports coordinator also teaches some courses there. He just delivered in so many ways. I was so psyched to talk to him because, as you heard and learned, he really has a mind and a sharp mind for marketing in general. So the way he approaches anything he does now, whether it was working at Huddle or working at Oxygen, and now with Endicott, and even before what he was doing with ESPN Boston and building up this brand and growing this fan base, this readership, this viewership, this consumer base from scratch, he really gets it and really understands the different pathways to develop fans and develop that kind of affinity and brand affinity that can really help drive things moving forward. So that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again to Brendan Hall. As always, you can find me on Twitter, NJH287, on LinkedIn as well. Find me, Neil Horowitz. Again, the podcast is available on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. You can also find every episode and more content at dsmsports.net. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.